He told the ranch owner he had nothing to give, so why did the man step closer instead of turning him away? The wind cuts sharp across the ridge, rattling the loose wire as Wyatt Boone stands still, dust clinging to his boots. Jeremiah Carter doesn't speak, just watches. A hawk circles overhead. Wyatt tightens his grip on his hat and says it plain, steady. Then the old man takes one step forward and doesn't look disappointed. What did he see in that moment? If this pulled you in, stay with me. The sun came up slow over Silver Creek Ranch, like it had all the time in the world. Dust hung low across the yard, kicked up by boots and hooves and the steady rhythm of work that started before most men finished dreaming. The smell of leather, coffee gone cold, and dry earth settled into everything. Wyatt Boone was already on his second task before the first voices carried across the corrals. He worked like he always did. Quiet. No wasted motion. No need to be seen. If a man stood back long enough, he'd notice something about Wyatt. Not what he did, but where he stood. Always just outside the circle. At the edge of a conversation. At the far side of a fire. Close enough to hear. Far enough not to belong. That was true in the mornings. And it was especially true when Naomi Carter stepped out onto the balcony above the main house. Wyatt didn't look up. He knew the sound of that door. The soft scrape of wood. The pause that followed. He kept his eyes on the fence post he was driving into the ground, hammer rising and falling with steady force. Not faster, not slower, like he hadn't noticed at all. By mid-morning, the yard had turned loud. A steer broke from the pen, and two men chased it down, boots slipping in loose dirt. Someone shouted. A rope snapped tight. Laughter followed, rough and easy. Near the far end of the corral, old Mr. Jenkins fumbled with a fence tool. His hands weren't as steady as they used to be. The metal slipped. There was a sharp sound, then a breath pulled in too fast. Wyatt heard it before he saw it. He set his hammer down and walked over, already reaching into his pocket. No hurry, no calling attention. Just a straight line from where he stood to where he was needed. Jenkins held his hand tight, blood seeping through his fingers. "Let me see," Wyatt said. The old man hesitated, then gave in. Wyatt didn't say much after that. He rinsed the cut with water from a tin canteen, tore a clean strip from the inside of his own sleeve, and wrapped it firm. Not too tight. Just enough. Jenkins watched him the whole time. "You didn't have to stop," the old man said. Wyatt shrugged once, tying the knot. "You can't hold a tool like that." That was it. He stepped back, picked up his hammer, and went right back to where he'd been. Same rhythm. Same pace. Like the moment hadn't happened at all. Up on the balcony, Naomi Carter hadn't moved. Her hand rested against the wooden frame, fingers still, eyes fixed on the yard below. The light caught in her hair, but she didn't shift with it. Not even when someone called her name from inside the house. She had seen the whole thing. Not the blood. Not the clumsy mistake. The part in between. The way Wyatt hadn't looked around first. The way he hadn't waited to be asked. The way he left without expecting anything back. She stayed there longer than she meant to. Long enough for Wyatt to finish the fence post and move on to the next task. Long enough to notice that he never once turned toward the house. Not even by accident. That was the part she couldn't quite place. Most men found reasons to look. Wyatt Boone found reasons not to. Down in the yard, the noise picked up again. A wagon rolled through the gate. Someone cursed at a stubborn mule. The day went on the way days always did at Silver Creek, steady, unforgiving, and full. But something small had settled into place. Wyatt kept working like nothing had changed. Naomi stepped back from the balcony, slow and quiet, as if she didn't want to disturb a thought that hadn't fully formed yet. She closed the door behind her. And for the rest of the day, she carried that moment with her. Not because it was big, because it wasn't. The next morning came in dry and bright. The kind of sky that didn't promise rain and didn't apologize for it either. Wyatt was at the tack room before most men finished their coffee. The door creaked open with that same long, tired sound it always made. Inside, the smell of oiled leather and dust sat heavy in the air. He moved through it without looking around much. Saddle first, then the straps, then the small things that kept a day from going wrong. That was when he saw it. A leather pouch resting near the edge of the workbench. Not tucked away, not hidden, just there. Wyatt stopped. Not long. Just enough. He picked it up, loosened the string, and tipped it slightly. Bills. More than a man misplaces without noticing. He counted once, then again. $30. He looked toward the open door, the yard beyond it. Voices carried in and out. No one watching. No one waiting. He pulled the string tight again and stepped out. Jeremiah Carter was near the main fence line, speaking low with one of the hands. Wyatt waited until the man stepped away before walking over. "Sir," he said, holding the pouch out, "found this in the tack room." Jeremiah looked at it, then at Wyatt. His eyes didn't move much, but they didn't miss anything either. "Looks like it was dropped," Wyatt added. A pause. Then Jeremiah took it. "Appreciate it." Wyatt nodded once and turned back the way he came. No hesitation. No second glance. Jeremiah watched him go. Not long. Just enough. By noon, the heat had settled in. A wagon rolled up from the southern trail, wheels creaking under the weight. The man driving it didn't bother slowing until he reached the gate. Clint Rollins, landowner from 2 miles west, known for talking more than listening. Naomi was in the yard when he stepped down. She stood near the water trough, sleeves rolled just enough to show she'd been working, not just watching. Clint tipped his hat, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You Carter folks run a tight place, chum," he said. "Didn't expect to see you out here doing the hard parts." Naomi didn't answer. Clint smiled anyway. Not a kind smile. The sort that stays a second too long. Wyatt was across the yard when it started. He heard the tone before he caught the words. The way a man can tell the weather by the wind alone. He kept walking. Then he stopped. Just for a moment. His jaw set, barely noticeable. Then he turned. Clint was still talking. Naomi hadn't moved. Wyatt stepped closer. Not fast, not slow. Just enough to be heard. "That gate needs clearing," he said, looking at Clint instead of her. Clint glanced at him, then back at Naomi. "I'm speaking to the lady." Wyatt didn't raise his voice. "And I'm speaking to you." Silence stretched out thin. Clint let out a breath through his nose. "You telling me how to stand on land that isn't yours?" Wyatt held his ground. "I'm telling you the wagon's in the way." Another pause. Then Clint gave a short laugh and stepped back toward the gate. "You got a habit of stepping in where you're not needed, Boone." Wyatt didn't answer. He moved past him, grabbed the wagon rail, and shifted it just enough to clear the path. Clint climbed up without another word. The wagon rolled out the way it came. Dust followed. Naomi didn't speak. Not then. Wyatt didn't look at her. He went back to work. Later that week, Jeremiah handed Wyatt a folded paper and a set of reins. 40 head, he said. "Take them into town. See what you can get." Wyatt glanced at the paper. Numbers written clean. A bottom line set in ink. "Yes, sir." The trail into town took half a day. The road cut through dry hills and narrow bends where the wind picked up dust and carried it sideways. Wyatt rode steady, keeping the herd tight, counting without thinking. At the stockyard, a man named Harlan Pike handled the buying. He looked over the cattle, ran a hand along one of the steers, then glanced back at Wyatt. "Market's soft this week," Pike said. "Could take them off your hands, though." He named a number, lower than the paper. Wyatt unfolded the sheet, checked once, then shook his head. "Not for that." Pike shrugged. "You bring them all this way? You might as well leave lighter." Wyatt said nothing. Pike leaned in a little, lowered his voice. "Tell you what. I write up the full price. We settle the difference between us. No one's the wiser." The yard was loud, men shouting, gates slamming, no one listening close. Wyatt folded the paper again, slid it back into his pocket. "Not interested." Pike studied him. "You sure about that?" Wyatt met his eyes. "I am." Another pause. Then Pike exhaled, rubbed his jaw, and called out to his clerk. "Write it up, full count." Wyatt stayed until the numbers were inked and the money counted. Every bill laid out, every head accounted for. He didn't leave until it matched. When he rode back into Silver Creek, the sun was already low. Jeremiah stood near the porch, waiting. Wyatt dismounted, handed over the reins, then the folded paper. The money came last. 40 head, he said. Full price. Jeremiah looked through the numbers, took his time. "You kept records?" he asked. Wyatt nodded. "Every stop." Another pause. Jeremiah folded the paper back up, handed it to him. "Go on," he said. Wyatt did. Across the yard, Naomi stood by the fence line. She didn't call out, didn't move. But when Wyatt passed, there was a moment, small, quiet, where their eyes met. Just long enough to notice. Then he looked away and kept walking. That night, the ranch settled into its usual quiet, wind brushing against the boards, a loose hinge tapping somewhere near the barn, the kind of sounds that fade into the dark. In the main house, Jeremiah sat alone at the table. The leather pouch rested near his hand, the folded paper beside it. He didn't open either. He just sat there, looking at the wood grain, listening to the night. Out in the yard, Wyatt moved through the shadows, finishing the last of the work no one asked him to do. No one called his name. No one told him to stay. He stayed anyway. And somewhere inside the house, Naomi Carter stood by the window again, watching, the same way she had before. Only now she knew she wasn't the only one. The days that followed didn't change much on the surface. Work still started before the light settled. Coffee still cooled too fast in tin cups. Men still spoke loud when they had something to prove and quiet when they didn't. Wyatt Boone stayed the same. If anything, he pulled back a little more. He took the outer fence lines, the jobs that kept a man away from the center of things, repairs no one wanted. Miles of wire that needed stretching across ground that didn't sit still. Jeremiah noticed. He didn't say anything. It was late in the week when he gave the order. "North Ridge," Jeremiah said, handing Wyatt a coil of wire and a small sack of staples. "Fence line needs fixing." A couple of the men nearby went quiet. Everyone knew that stretch. Rocky ground, slopes that shifted underfoot. 3 men had tried to run a straight line across it in the past year. All 3 came back with bent posts and half-finished work. Wyatt nodded once. "I'll take a mule." Jeremiah shook his head. "Too steep in places." Another pause. Wyatt didn't argue. He just picked up what was handed to him. By the time the sun reached high, he was already halfway up the ridge. The ground broke uneven under his boots, stones sliding just enough to keep a man careful. He worked slow, not cautious, just exact. Post by post. He measured with his eyes more than any tool, adjusted angles where the ground dipped, reset when something leaned wrong. No rush, no wasted movement. The wind picked up in the afternoon, carrying dry grit across his face. He didn't stop. On the second day, Naomi rode out farther than she usually did. Not close, not enough to call it a visit, just enough to see. From the lower trail, she could spot him against the ridgeline, a small figure against all that rock and sky. Bent over the work, straightening, then bending again. He didn't look down. She didn't call out. The distance between them stayed exactly where he had put it. She watched a while, then turned her horse and rode back the way she came. By the fifth day, the line had begun to take shape, straight where it could be, angled where it had to be. Wire pulled tight, not too tight. Each post set deep enough to hold through the next hard wind. Wyatt worked through the last stretch as the sun dropped low. When he finished, he stood there for a moment. Not long, just enough to look at it. Then he gathered what was left, a few staples, a length of unused wire, 2 posts that hadn't been needed. He set them aside in a neat pile near the final stake, tied a short piece of cloth around them so they wouldn't scatter. No note, no mark, just left there. Jeremiah rode out the next morning. He took his time getting up the ridge. The horse picked its way careful over the loose ground. When he reached the top, he stopped, looked, didn't say anything. The line held true across the slope, not forced, not rushed, built to the ground instead of against it. He rode along it slow, eyes tracking each post, each stretch of wire. At the far end, he saw the pile. He dismounted, picked up the wire, weighed it in his hand. Then he set it back down. That afternoon, the heat settled heavy across the ranch. Wyatt had just come in from the south side when one of the hands stepped over. "Mr. Carter wants you up top," he said, nodding toward the hill beyond the main house. Wyatt wiped his hands on a cloth, set his tools aside, and headed that way without asking why. The hill wasn't steep, just high enough to see the whole spread. Corrals, barn, the long stretch of land fading into pale distance. Jeremiah stood there already, hands resting on the top rail of the fence, hat pulled low. Wyatt stopped a few steps back, waited. For a while, neither of them spoke. The wind moved through the grass in slow waves. Somewhere down below, a gate slammed shut. Jeremiah didn't turn right away. "I've been watching you," he said. Wyatt's eyes stayed on the land. "I figured." That got a slight turn of the head. "You did?" Wyatt nodded once. "Some things don't happen by accident." A pause. "And you didn't change anything," Jeremiah said. Wyatt shook his head. "Wouldn't know how." Silence again. Jeremiah looked out over the cattle, then back toward the house, the balcony just visible from where they stood. "Naomi," he said. Wyatt went still, not stiff, not startled, just still. Jeremiah watched him now. "I've seen the way she looks at you," he said, "and the way you don't look back." The wind passed between them. "Why is that?" Wyatt took a breath. Let it out slow. He didn't rush the answer. Didn't soften it either. "I have nothing to offer your daughter." The words sat there, plain, unadorned. Wyatt kept his eyes forward. "No land, no money worth speaking of, just wages and what comes after." He swallowed once. Not loud, not dramatic. "A woman like her deserves more than that." Jeremiah didn't interrupt. Wyatt went on quieter now. "So I keep my distance." That was it. No apology. No request. Just a line drawn, same as the fence on the ridge. Jeremiah studied him for a long moment. The worn shirt, the dust on his boots, the way he stood without shifting. Then he looked back out over the land again. The answer had been given. Clean, and without asking for anything in return. The wind shifted on the ridge, carrying the dry scent of sage and dust across the hilltop. Jeremiah Carter didn't move right away. He kept his hands resting on the fence rail, eyes fixed somewhere out past the far line where the land blurred into pale horizon. Wyatt stood where he was. He didn't fill the silence, didn't try to soften what he had said. He had given the truth. That was all he knew how to do. Jeremiah let out a slow breath, almost lost to the wind. Then he turned. Not quickly, not with surprise, just certain. That's why you deserve her. The words landed without force, no raise in tone, no weight added to make them sound bigger than they were. Wyatt blinked once. He didn't step forward, didn't step back. For a moment it looked like he hadn't heard right. Jeremiah met his eyes. You think a man who counts his worth in land and money is fit to stand beside her? Wyatt didn't answer. Jeremiah nodded once as if the silence confirmed something. I've seen enough men come through here with both, he said. Didn't make them steady. Didn't make them right. He glanced back toward the ridgeline in the distance. The money in the tack room, he said. The cattle in town. That stretch of fence no one could finish. Wyatt's jaw tightened just slightly. You knew, Jeremiah said. Wyatt didn't look away. I had a sense, and you stayed the same. There's only one way I know how. Another pause. Jeremiah studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded again, slower this time. That's the only kind of man I'd trust with anything that matters. The wind picked up again, brushing past them both. Wyatt looked down at his hands. Dust settled into the lines of his skin, same as it always did. I still don't have anything to give her, he said. Jeremiah shook his head. You've been giving it all along. He didn't explain further. Didn't need to. That evening, the light turned soft across the ranch, the kind of golden hour that didn't last long, but stayed with you after it was gone. Wyatt stood near the edge of the main house, just outside the garden gate. The wood was worn smooth where hands had passed over it for years. A small lantern hung from a hook nearby, not yet lit. He hadn't planned what to say. Didn't try to. He just stood there, hat in his hands, waiting. The gate creaked open before he could knock. Naomi stepped out. She didn't seem surprised. Her sleeves were rolled up just enough to show she'd been working. A loose strand of hair had slipped free near her cheek, catching the last of the light. You took your time, she said. Wyatt almost smiled. It didn't quite reach his eyes. I wasn't sure I should come. She leaned lightly against the gate. And now? He looked at her then, really looked. Your father asked me to. Naomi nodded once, like she had expected that. Silence settled between them. Not heavy, not uncomfortable. Just there. Wyatt shifted his weight slightly. I told him I don't have much to offer. I know. That made him pause. You know? Naomi's gaze didn't waver. You've been saying it without words for a long time. Wyatt looked down for a second, then back at her. I kept my distance, he said. Thought it was the right thing. Naomi stepped a little closer. Not enough to close the space entirely, just enough to change it. You think I didn't see? She said quietly. The question stayed in the air. Wyatt didn't answer. He didn't need to. Naomi's voice softened, just slightly. That morning in the yard, when you stopped for Mr. Jenkins." Wyatt's brow furrowed. "You were there?" "Upstairs," she said, "behind the window." He let that settle. All the days he had worked without looking up. All the moments he thought had gone unseen. Naomi watched him take it in. "I don't need much either," she said. "Just someone who doesn't change depending on who's watching." Wyatt's hand tightened slightly around the brim of his hat. "That I can do," he said. Naomi smiled then. Not wide, not for show, just real. "I know," she said. The light faded a little more, slipping toward dusk. For the first time since he had come to Silver Creek, Wyatt didn't look away first. He held her gaze, and this time, she didn't let him go. The days that followed didn't change all at once. Silver Creek still woke before the sun. The same gate creaked at the same hour. Coffee still sat too long in enamel cups on the porch rail. Men still worked until the light ran out. But something had shifted. Not in the land, not in the work. In the way Wyatt Boone walked through it. He didn't move closer to the center, didn't speak louder, didn't take more than he had before. He just stopped stepping back. They were married in early fall. No long procession, no crowd worth mentioning. Just a handful of folks from nearby, standing under the wide porch as the wind moved through the open yard. Wyatt stood straight, hat in his hands, eyes level. When he spoke, he didn't search for words. He said what he meant. Naomi listened the way she always had. Quiet, steady, not looking away. Jeremiah stood beside her, one hand resting light on her arm. When the time came, he didn't hesitate. He placed her hand in Wyatt's. No speech, no instruction, just a small nod. That was enough. Winter came hard that year. Cold settled deep into the boards of the house and the joints of the men who worked it. Frost lined the fence posts in the early mornings, thin and sharp. Wyatt rose before the others, same as always, checked the lines, counted the herd. Not because anyone told him to, because it needed doing. Naomi moved through the house with the same quiet rhythm, books on the table, a kettle always near the stove, small things that kept a place steady. In the evenings, Wyatt would sit on the porch steps, boots dusted white with frost. Naomi would stand in the doorway, watching him a moment before stepping out beside him. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Jeremiah rode less. At first it was small, a skipped morning, a longer rest in the shade. Then it became something else. He spent more time on the porch, watching, the same way he always had. Only now, his eyes stayed on different things. The way Wyatt checked the gate twice before turning in. The way he counted under his breath, not trusting memory when it mattered. The way Naomi moved beside him without asking where she was needed. One evening, as the light faded and the air turned cold enough to bite, Jeremiah called them both out. They came without delay. He sat in his chair, blanket pulled across his legs, hat low. "The fence?" he asked. Wyatt glanced toward the ridge, though it was out of sight now in the dark. "Still standing," he said. Jeremiah nodded once. That was all. The wind came down stronger that night. It moved across the land in long, steady waves, the kind that tested everything that wasn't set right. Inside the house, the lantern burned low. Naomi sat near the window, Wyatt by the door, boots off, hands resting still. Jeremiah didn't speak again. He didn't need to. Sometime before dawn, the wind eased. The boards stopped creaking. The world settled into that deep quiet that comes just before the light returns. Outside, the cattle lay where they were meant to be. The gate held, and up on the ridge where rock met open sky, the line Wyatt had set still ran true, unmoved. In the morning, the ranch woke like it always did. No pause, no ceremony. Work waited. Wyatt stepped out into the yard, pulling his coat tighter against the cold. Naomi followed, stopping just long enough to rest her hand against the post near the door. Neither of them said anything. They didn't look back. They didn't have to. Some things didn't need to be written down to last. They stayed, in the way a man showed up, in the way he stayed the same. Now imagine standing where Wyatt once stood. Hands rough from work, pockets near empty, knowing you care for someone you believe deserves more than you can give. Not because you lack feeling, but because you measure yourself honestly. And imagine choosing, day after day, to do the right thing anyway. No audience, no reward. Just small, quiet choices that no one might ever see. That's where something real begins. Because love, real love, doesn't grow from what a man owns. It grows from what he refuses to compromise. The way he stands when it would be easier to step aside. The way he holds steady when no one is watching. And sometimes, the right person sees it. Not the noise, not the surface, the truth underneath. So maybe the question isn't what you can offer someone. Maybe it's who you are when nothing is being asked of you. If this story stayed with you, I'd like to hear where you were while you listened. And if you're someone who still believes in quiet strength, in love that's earned over time, there are more stories like this waiting for you here. Until the next one, take care of what matters.